Good evening and welcome to the Coon Rapids City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. If you could please rise and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kraskowiak.
Here.
Councilmember Butler.
Here.
Councilmember Novak. Councilmember Geisler.
Here.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Councilmember Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Cook.
Here.
One absent, Novak.
All right, thank you. First thing then is next thing I should say is to get our agenda adopted.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Geisler and a second by Carlson. Is there any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. Next would be the first item on our agenda, which is to approve the minutes of the March 4th, 2025 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from the March 4th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
Wow. I'm going to go motion by Butler and a second by Kraskowiak. Is there any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And those minutes are approved. We have 5 items on our consent agenda this evening. The first one is adopt resolution 2544, setting a hearing date for miscellaneous assessments 2025-1 levy. The city council must set a public hearing as required by state statutes. At that hearing, the city council may refer appellants to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals, and the Board of Adjustment and Appeals will then give their recommendation. And the Board of Adjustment and Appeals is expected to conduct this hearing on May 1st and make a recommendation to the city council at the May 20th council meeting. Staff will incorporate the process in the required mailing to the property owner, and these assessments include services provided to taxpayers, in most cases code enforcement violations. The terms of repayment are determined by the amount being assessed, and the proposed assessments are categorized by the number of years to be assessed and the interest rate recommended. So we're looking to adopt resolution 25-44, miscellaneous assessment declaring the cost to be assessed, ordering preparation of the proposed assessment roll, and ordering the public hearing for April 1st, 2025 on the proposed assessment roll. Next item on the consent agenda is approved nominations to the Coon Creek Watershed District Board of Managers. It's been requested that the city council make recommendations for appointments, and we've received 2 nominations, so we're putting forth Mary Campbell and Ethan Campbell as nominations, and Mary Campbell currently serves on the board. Both candidates are Coon Rapids residents interested in serving on this board, and a summary from the candidates is attached. So we're looking to make a formal nomination to the Coon Creek Watershed District Board of Managers. Next item on the consent agenda is to approve a contract between the state of Minnesota and the city of Coon Rapids for the ICWC program, and that is the Institution Community Work Crew. I always like to read those out once. The ICWC crews generally work under the direction of public works supervisory staff, and complete a wide variety of maintenance and minor construction projects throughout the city. We're looking to approve the updated contract between the Minnesota Department of Corrections and the city of Coon Rapids for the 2-year Institution Community Work Crew ICWC program. Item 5 is to adopt resolution 25-49, accepting grant funds from Coon Creek Watershed District and approve the water quality cost share agreement. And this is all about our goose management program, our annual contracted goose management activities from high population areas along impaired creeks to reduce E. coli and phosphorus loading to Coon Creek. And the city was awarded up to $10,000 of the project's total cost, or 50%. Also, we're doing a leaky sewer service investigation, and this will continue last year's project led by the Utilities Division. City staff will reach out to property owners in proposed and future city street reconstruction areas to televise private sewer lines at no cost to residents in an effort to identify potential issues within the private service lines that could potentially lead to contaminants leaching into aquifers and wells. Findings from this investigation will inform the scope of future infrastructure improvement projects, and the city was awarded up to $26,100 of the project cost, again, to 50 cents, or 50%. Wow. The Coon Creek Watershed agrees to disperse 80% of the approved cost share amounts, $28,880, upon execution of the attached agreement. The city will implement the projects by December 31st, 2026, and the CCWD, the Coon Creek Watershed, will disperse any additional remaining funds upon proof of completion. So we're looking to adopt Resolution 25-49, accepting grant funds from the Coon Creek Watershed District and authorize execution of the Water Quality Cost Share Agreement. Item 6, and that's the final item on our consent agenda, and that's our receive the schedule of electronic payments. Minnesota statute requires a list of transactions made by electronic funds transfer be provided to the city council at the next regular meeting, and we're looking to receive the schedule of electronic payments from February 27th, 2025 to March 12th, 2025, and that is the end of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson,
motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Second.
motion by Carlson and a second by Butler. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, Councilmember Geisler?
Ms. Leswire, do we need to read in the amended resolution for 25-44?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Geisler, that would probably be good.
Okay.
Yes.
So we received an amended resolution slightly changing the numbers that are here. I'll read the first paragraph here. Whereas costs to the city for abatement of code violations, securing and monitoring fees for vacant property, mowing of weeds, utility bankruptcy, and other unpaid fees, with total costs incurred for the improvements being $98,481.13, and administrative fees of $7,920, making the total cost of the improvements $106,401.13. Those are the amended numbers, and then in bullet 1, the number that is adjusted there reads $106,401.13.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson?
there's your motion to
What?
amend?
No, there's no
The
change to the
The
motion.
amendment's good now, okay.
Yeah, because that was,
Just
that
read-
wasn't, that was just referred to as a resolution number, so I didn't bother reading the amounts.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and the consent agenda is adopted. Item 7 is to conduct a public hearing for vacation of drainage and utility easements and consider resolution 25-48. Mr. Brody.
Your Honor, we did have this matter before you about a month ago. We're asking for a public hearing and then a resolution to adopt the drainage and utility easements. This is for the project now known as Coon Creek Commons. As part of the redevelopment of that site, or the development of that site, we're asking that the drainage and utility easement that kind of cuts across the property be vacated. I believe we're getting new easements for items when the final plat comes through with that project.
All right. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Brody on this before we open up the public hearing? All right. If anybody is here to address the council, we'll open the public hearing for the vacation of drainage and utility easements and consider resolution 25-48. This is for the property at 1210 117th Lane. Anybody here to address council for the public hearing? And anybody here for a public hearing? We're going to close the public hearing. And council, what are your wishes?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Geisler,
I move that we adopt resolution 25-24 to vacate drainage and utility easements for 1210 117th Lane Northwest.
Second.
motion by Geisler and a second by Armstrong. Is there discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 8 is to consider water tower decommissioning contracts and resolution 24-22 sub 8 accepting bids and awarding the contract for the Foley monopole. Mr. Hammer, are you happy?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we did come in under what our estimates were. I would have liked a little more competition, but I think we got some good prices. We had 3 separate contracts. One is for the demolition of the existing tower. The other is site preparation, and that really just entails removal of some of the footing materials and the underground vaults and piping that serves that tower. Those 2 items, contracts A and B, are water utility fund costs. They're related to the old tower. And then contract C, monopole construction, would be in the, was it revolving construction fund? And all of these fall within what was estimated and budgeted. We'll also have a cost for engineering services for construction administration and inspections on this. So it appears as if the total costs hitting the water fund are roughly $228,000. And the revolving construction fund would be about $341,000, and that includes the engineering fees that go with it. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but we are recommending award of those 3 separate contracts. One to General Construction Services in the amount of $179,500 for the demolition. Dave Perkins Contracting in the amount of $15,300 for the site preparation. And Vinco for $291,707.29 for construction of the monopole. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions for Mr. Hammer?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. I saw in the discussion that it mentioned that all the work would be completed by November 2025, but I was curious if we approve this tonight, how quickly would the water tower itself be going down?
Councilmember Butler, we still have to get back with McDonald's, as we had an easement with them. It needs to be warm enough temperatures, it needs to be non-windy days, because there's sparks and other things. We got to coordinate with Anoka County on possible road closures, the strip mall. So we had always estimated probably mid-April start, but the way the weather is, one day it's 80, the next day it's 20. So I'm not sure what the next month is going to hold. But the sooner we get in, the better. Nobody's locking in and waiting for anything. So as soon as the weather turns, we get contracts executed, we negotiate and get things settled with the landowners, we'll proceed.
Thank you.
And Mr. Hammer, the contractor that's going to do the demolition will be aware of how much time we've got with, the McDonald's is going to be closed for 1 day, 2 days? What was it?
Maximum of 1 day, Mr. Mayor. And that-
Maximum 1 day?
Yeah, that was all included in the specifications, so
Okay.
they're clear. We tried to limit road closures to no more than 3 days, so they have a set of criteria they have to follow. One of the contractors said, I may not even have to close the road, or I may not have to close McDonald's. So there's just different ways they attack it. Some
Okay.
want to cut it and drop it, others want to cut it into pieces and bring it down slowly, others will put a crane on and just bring it to the ground and then dismantle it. So once we get contracts awarded, we'll sort some of that through pre-construction.
But none involved hooking a chain to it and driving with a pickup, right? Like that Missouri one? Okay, good. All right. Any other questions of Mr. Hammer on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Armstrong?
just, it seems like an odd question for me to be asking, but this Dave Perkins Contracting, $15,300 when the engineer's estimate is at $40,000. I scratch my head and go, huh?
Councilmember Armstrong, you're not the first one that's asked that question. Dave Perkins, they do a lot of work in the city, so I called
Yep.
him personally and just said, Renee, you understand the requirements? And he said, well, yeah, I just got to cut off 3 feet of each of those footings. I'm going to crush it. He goes, it's less than a day's worth of work for me. I'm trying to save the city money. And I said, well, I also know that sometimes you don't always read those specifications. So please tell me that I won't be asked for additional money. You are going to do exactly what's in there for 15.3. And he says, I will do it for 15.3. Knowing him and the fact that we have a relationship, not only does he work in the city, but he does work for the city, makes me a little more comfortable that I can make sure that he adheres to this. Otherwise, there might be no other options for him going forward.
Your comfort makes me comfortable.
All right. That was actually a very good question and a very good discussion, because we have 4 civil engineering students here watching the council meeting. So that's probably a good little exchange for them to overhear. All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac.
a question on the budgeting for this. Are we fully budgeted for this? You mentioned that it came in under the engineer's estimate, which is good, but it still seems like it's coming in higher than what we anticipated when we started talking about the water tower project in 2023.
Councilmember Grisoviac, I'm trying to pull up the budget quickly. Maybe Ms. Hanson knows the numbers off the top of her head.
And as you're looking that up, and just for the sake of the audience and the community, we talked about taking down that tower and building this monopole, so we have good cell service and things like that in our community. And it's a big number here. We're gonna be approaching a little over $400,000, but it actually gets paid back to the city over time because we lease those antennas on that, so it is coming back to us. But there seemed to be like about a 20% difference from the questions that I was asking when we were talking about the water tower. So,
Okay. Councilmember Griswold, the revolving construction fund, we had 450,000 for the monopole construction, and then the water fund, we had 350,000 for the removal of the old tower.
okay, so we're at 485, we had 450, okay, we're close.
340 for the costs compared to 450, and then 228 compared to 350. So we're roughly 200,000 under what our original estimates were.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering because I was looking at the engineer's estimates were 592 or so, and we're gonna get done for quite a bit less than that, but again, when we were talking about this in 2023, we were looking at a cost of 400, so, right? Does that sound? about right?
400 just for the monopole, and those numbers are 340.
Ah, okay,
There's two funding sources, part 240-ish or what are my numbers again? 228 is gonna go to the water fund, and we had estimated 350. And 340 is going to the revolving construction fund, and we had estimated 40 or 400.
450.
And then
Okay.
we upped it to 450 when things kind of got crazy with steel and some of the other costs that are out there, inflation.
okay, that clarifies what I had questions on. Thank you.
All right. But we're still not gonna build it unless somebody actually makes a motion. Councilmember Geisler?
I'll make a motion to award the contracts and approve Resolution 24-22 Sub 8, accepting bids and awarding contracts for the Foley monopole.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now, what am I looking at here? Why don't I? In my recommended motion,
Yeah.
I've got award a contract to General Construction Services in the amount of $179,500 for water tower demolition.
Mr. Mayor, I'll amend my motion to, as listed here, award a contract to General Construction Services in the amount of $179,500 for water tower demolition. Award a contract to Dave Perkins Contracting, Inc. In the amount of $15,300 for site prep. And adopt Resolution 24-22 Sub 9, awarding a contract to Vinco, Inc. in the amount of $291,707.29.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion by Geisler and a second by Butler. Is there further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 9 is to consider Resolution 25-46, reallocating the 2024 general fund budget and amending the 2024 and 2025 budgets. Councilmember Skoviac's got a couple questions here, I'm sure.
Mr. Mayor. No, actually, I had my questions answered earlier.
Oh,
today.
perfect.
Yeah.
Ms. Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Attached to your agenda packet is an unaudited statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the general fund, showing a favorable experience compared to our budget. Part of our year-end process, we do two things. So we look at actual versus budget, and our legal level of budgetary control is set at the category level within each activity. So we are presenting for your approval to reallocate budget between those between the categories and the activities so that our actuals are in line with the budgetary amounts within those. The net impact of that is a zero impact. Secondarily, we are asking you to approve carry forward. So we have mostly capital items that for one reason or the other did not get purchased in '24 or the delivery didn't happen until after the year end. And so we're asking to carry forward those amounts into 2025. The amount is $10,000 in the general fund and then $9,127,730 in other funds. Most of those are projects. So obviously those tend to take longer than the fiscal year. And those budgets were approved when we approved the projects, but we just want to kind of memorialize that in our current operating budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Hanson?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson?
make a motion to adopt Resolution 25-46, reallocating the 2024 general fund budget and amending the 2024 and 2025 budgets.
Second.
Motion by Carlson and a second by Armstrong. Is there further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and that motion carries. Item 10 is to consider Resolution 25-45, authorizing the transfer of funds. Hit the
Take that
highlights,
one
whatever you
again.
want to do here.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Council, before you is a list of transfers that were budgeted and, or took place or needed in 2024. So we're asking for formal approval for these, so that we can wrap up our year-end reporting. Descriptions or reasons for the transfers are outlined in the memo, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
That was succinct. Yeah. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Butler?
I move to adopt Resolution 25-45, authorizing the transfer of funds for 2024.
Second?
Motion by Butler and a second by was it Carlson? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, and that motion carries. Item 11 is to consider renewal of a joint powers agreement with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety for Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force. Chief Steiner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. In 2018, the Coon Rapids Police Department became an affiliate member of the State of Minnesota Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force. It's in conjunction with the Minnesota BCA, and the purpose is to identify and arrest those involved in human trafficking in Coon Rapids and our surrounding communities. As part of, as being a member of this team, we would participate in occasional investigations. Some of these are in Coon Rapids, many of them are in Coon Rapids, some are in our surrounding communities, and they would in turn reciprocate when we have resources needed in Coon Rapids. Affiliation with the Human Trafficking Task Force will ensure that the police department stays trained and informed and ready to assist our most vulnerable victims when they need it. The agreement is for 5 years. It just recently expired. We've been operating under the agreement since 2018. The detective assigned remains under the supervision of the Coon Rapids Police Department and doesn't get housed outside of the police department. Also, as part of the team, we would be reimbursed for any type of details or investigations that occur in conjunction with the Human Trafficking Task Force, and there is no cost to be a member agency. So we are recommending that we renew the joint powers agreement with the state of Minnesota Department of Public Safety and authorize the Coon Rapids Police Department to continue being a member of the Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force.
Any questions of Chief Steiner?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson?
make a motion to renew the joint powers agreement with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety to authorize Coon Rapids Police be a member of the Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force.
Second.
Motion by Carlson and a second by Butler. Is there discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson?
I'm very proud that our police department is active with these investigations. It's a horrible, horrible crime that impacts so many people, and Coon Rapids is certainly not exempt from it. And any victim that we can get out of the situation or any perpetrator that we can get arrested is a good thing.
Very good. Other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? and that motion carries. Item 12 is to consider adoption of the active transportation plan. Mr. Brown, anything you want to?
Yes, good evening. I will provide a quick update. I know we've talked about this at a few different meetings, so just to recap, we pursued this grant opportunity from MnDOT over the last year or so. Our main goal in doing this work was to, one, update our rather outdated sidewalk and trail plan. It was in need of an update, and we thought if we can get some free money to update it, that would be a good opportunity. Also, it's important to have a policy framework in place for sidewalk and trail and other pedestrian and bicycle improvements, just because when we go to apply for outside funding opportunities, having a competitive policy in place is really important. For instance, we've had some success with the state Safe Routes to School program over the years and others. So having that policy framework in place allows us to have competitive funding applications for those programs. So over the last year or so, we partnered with other public agencies, the county, the school district, received some online engagement from many of our city residents to put together this document. A draft was completed late last year or so. We met with the council in a January work session on it. Based on the feedback at that work session, we made and worked with the consultant to make several changes, and then distributed that revised document to the council just a few weeks ago. So we are asking tonight that you consider adopting the active transportation plan. I can answer any questions. Mr. Himmer and Mr. Hansen are here as well, and we're deeply engaged in this process.
All right, very good. Council have any questions for Mr. Brown or Mr. Himmer or Mr. Hanson? Wow.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson?
motion to adopt the active transportation plan?
Second.
Motion by Carlson and a second by Geisler. Is there any discussion on this? We've had a lot of discussion on this. Councilmember Geisler?
That's actually just what I want to bring up. I thank staff for taking the input and making adjustments to this and including more things. There's a great opportunity here with active transportation funding having specific funding forces now at the state from things that MnLeg did for us as a whole. So there's definitely going to be bigger pots of money or different pots of money than what we're used to seeing. And so I'm very happy to see a fully fleshed plan. I encourage anyone to go out and look at it. If you want to learn about walk, bike, and roll and how the community looks and all that, take a look. It's only 113 pages, so have fun. But yeah, that's it. I thank you again, staff, for putting together a great document.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Butler?
I also wanted to thank staff, and I also just wanted to say for neighbors of mine who lived by Sand Creek Elementary School, there's a lot of great information in this plan just about survey results related to the bike demonstration that they had over the summer. So I know a lot of folks kept asking me questions about it and gave a lot of feedback, and I just encourage folks to see what their neighbors submitted to the city on it as well.
All right, any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are at the open mic public comment portion of the meeting. You guys here for open mic either? No? All right. This is your chance. All right. I don't have any reports on previous open mics, and we're to other business. Council. Well, Councilmember Geisler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I did want to bring up is there's a series of bills being under consideration right now that are addressing how land use and zoning will work in cities from the state level. Many of them are focused on housing affordability as their main thrust, but there's a lot of pieces and a lot of very deep mechanics in them. One of the things that I was going to ask staff in general about is understanding what this will do to our code if these do pass. Some of them appear to also interact with each other quite significantly if one or more pass at the same time. So I'd like to understand that and just have a good sense of what would we be looking at as far as how would the community change? Would we have to plan infrastructure differently? What is that? I know this is not a new topic, it has come up before, but the bills are slightly different than last time, and so understanding what would we have to plan for budgetarily, what would we have to plan for otherwise if these do pass, considering they do seem to have bipartisan support.
Mr.
Yeah,
Sibler?
Mayor, Councilmember Geisler, those bills are a significant concern to not only Coon Rapids, but to all cities really, as, you know, we all have our individual takes on how we go about city planning and zoning and what that community looks like. So when the state legislature continues to sort of threaten these preemption bills, we do get very nervous about some of the more draconian measures that are included in them. A similar conversation that we had with council last year about these very same topics. The League of Minnesota Cities and Metro Cities are asking communities to contact their local legislators to let them know what those concerns are. And if council's interested, we did put a letter together last year that we didn't approve officially at a council level. We just asked that if anybody was interested in signing the letter, that they could do so, just to bring attention to the issue. So certainly we can do that again. Individually and more on behalf of sort of our legislative policy groups like League of Minnesota Cities. When I meet with legislators individually, I will mention to them some of the concerns we have with some of these provisions, because I think, well, some of them appear to be well-intentioned. I think they really will limit a city's ability to do it, which is intentional, is city's ability to control their zoning, housing, you name it, all in the name of affordable housing, which really I don't know that that's going to move the needle too much. So a lot to dive into, you know, don't necessarily have the time tonight to do that, but Councilmember Geisler and I exchanged a few emails, but certainly we can probably next week, even at the work session, give you a little preview of what those impacts might be if they were to come to fruition. So.
Yeah, clearly League of Minnesota Cities and Metro Cities are working on this. So. All right,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember
And
Kraskowiak?
maybe to the management. When you say the League of Minnesota Cities is working on this, I understand that the Minnesota League of Cities is kind of opposing a lot of these measures that they're trying to put in force with us, you know, preempting our ability to make coding, you know, zoning decisions for the city. So they've got a big, long list of why we would have concerns and how the impact would not be so great for us in short-term or long-term planning. So I would like to see a letter or something drafted. I would be on board to let our legislators know formally that, you know, a lot of the stuff that's in there right now wouldn't work for us.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, Councilmember Carlson?
this is to Mr. Stemwedel. Now, is this something that we could bring to the work session next week? A letter? I just feel like it should be sooner than later.
Yeah, sure, Mayor and Council, absolutely. I know there are, yes, I think that's probably our next opportunity to have you all read something and then sign it if you so choose. There are some Senate hearings, even I think Monday is the next Senate hearing on some of these measures. So it's moving along. You know, certain things have already kind of moved forward in the House. So doing something within the next week or so in terms of communicating, if council members are interested, their concerns about some of these bills would be probably the best thing to do is by Tuesday or Wednesday next week, just so it's not too far gone by then.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that bipartisan support hangs on. I know some of them are greater Minnesota, they're not impacted by this. I think they're using it as a bargaining chip. Ah, yeah, sure, I'll get on that. All right. Any other business to come before council?
Just-
What, Mr. Himmer?
Mr. Mayor, Council, we conducted our pre-construction meeting for Trunk Highway 10 construction project earlier this week. Actually, it was late last week, and construction is going to begin right out here, starting the end of this week and into next week. Tree clearing will be happening over the next 2 weeks. They'll start with bypass lanes and some of the detouring happening at the end of the month, with construction in earnest probably starting that second week in April. So spring has sprung on this project, and Highway 10 will start construction to add that third lane in each direction between Round Lake and roughly Hanson Boulevard.
And Mr. Hammer, where's going to be the best source for people to look for project information? Is it going to be the county, or is it going to be MnDOT, or?
There's a MnDOT
city?
website. I can work with our communication staff to get it up online. I can route it all to you as well.
Yeah, I think that would be good, because I would think the chamber's going to want to get that out for everybody that's passing through Coon Rapids. And Coon Rapids residents, of course, are going to want to know.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griscovian?
to that point, are we gonna see any impact to lane closures or anything like that, or ramp closures?
That
this
will all
progresses?
occur in phasing. There are like 17 different phases to this project. So there will be intermittent closures of access as well as lanes. And so that's what everything is required 5 to 7 days in advance to have the signage out telling you, 5 days from now, this is going to start. So pay attention to those signs
Right.
because they do get out in advance.
Gotcha.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Geisler?
And I've looked at other ones, but if you sign up on MnDOT site, you can actually get email notices of things going on there. On their project site, you can sign up and just have them sent right to you every time that there's a major update or things happening, so.
Excellent.
All right. Ms. Lensmeyer, did you have something?
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Stemwedel?
Mayor, council, property value notices are arriving in mailboxes. If you haven't received yours already, you will be, if you own property in Coon Rapids. The purpose of that is to give folks a preview of what the value that's been assigned to their property is for the purposes of taxes payable the next year, in this case, 2026. In that notice is sort of dates at which residents can attend to contest their value, which is certainly within their right to do. In our case, we're holding our local Board of Appeal and Equalization on April 22nd at 7 p.m. right here in the council chambers. However, I would strongly advise anybody who has that and has big questions or concerns about changes to their value to call our city assessor's office now, because 9 times out of 10, once it's explained to you the process and what happened to your property, you better understand it, and usually people move on. Occasionally, you bring information to the table that the city assessor might want to look into. Perhaps they haven't been in your property for a while, and there were assumptions made about improvements in your home that maybe aren't accurate. So usually, the city assessor's office is able to work through those things, and then if they agree that maybe their value is a little high, they might adjust it down. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes they maintain their recommendation. Nonetheless, it's always good to have a conversation with them. You can show up that night, but then usually there's just some confusion for the property owner about how the process works. So I just like to take a minute about this time every year to encourage people, call now, you'll save yourself a lot of time. And then if you decide that you still want to contest it, terrific. That's fine, that's why the process is there, but it's good to be a little more educated walking in.
Yeah, to your point, please call the assessor if you question your value, because when you just show up here the night of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals, it's really difficult for us to do anything then, because our assessor doesn't have his research with him. You don't have an appraisal with you, probably.
Right.
So the assessor is very good to work with. That's absolutely the way to go.
Yeah.
Call him and talk to him. To them. All right,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson?
I had, been a while since I had a solicitor at my door, but they're out there, and I had a very brief conversation with the solicitor yesterday. And I'm not opposed to door-to-door sales, and I'm certainly, boy, I'll tell you, I know sales, tough job, but they just have to do it right. And I was just wondering, Ms. Lensmeyer, if I'd call on you just to briefly describe what our expectations are for our solicitors.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Carlson, anyone wishing to solicit in the city of Coon Rapids is required to be licensed, and a part of that process is we do run them through a background check before we let them out into the neighborhoods. Most importantly, though, they need to display, which means wear, their name badge that we issue here in the clerk's office, and they need to produce the license when they're asked for it. So if you've got someone at your door that cannot produce that, then feel free to call clerk's office and let us know, or 911, and we'll get a police incident report, and we will work with that. They are to be respectful of the no soliciting sign. So if I get a report that they are ignoring that kind of thing, we can contact the company that they are with, and we can make some recommendations that they stop that or risk no longer being licensed. So we keep a list of those that are approved out on our website. If you have questions, you can take a look at that or give us a call and we'll let you know.
Councilmember Geisler?
Ms. Lenzmeyer, is the company licensed or the individual licensed?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Geisler, we are licensing the individuals, but we hold the company accountable because they sign a letter indicating that the person soliciting for them is allowed to do so. So we expect to, it's easier for us to use that hammer, right? We call them and say, hey, you know, you've got a guy out there that's doing something, please make him stop, so.
So you, just because the business is listed, that person would still have to have their individual badge shown?
Correct.
Yeah, because that individual has to pass the background check.
Yes.
Because we've had companies before where individual employees of theirs didn't pass. So then the company's appealed it, and it's like, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Carlson?
We have had people less than honest on their application.
Yeah, yes, we have.
Yeah, and I think last year seemed like there was a big problem with just being rude. Some folks, they were licensed, but they were rude.
Oh.
And so it's good to let Ms. Lenzmeyer know about those things.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Had the one guy come to my door, and
That was so
I-
bad.
I said, where's your solicitor's license? Oh, I got one. Well, he pulls it out of his back pocket, and it was Blaine. It's like, I live close to Councilmember Geisler. There's not much margin between us and Champlin. You know, I mean, we're about as far from Blaine as you can get in Coon Rapids.
He came to my door 10 minutes later and I asked him the same question. And he ran away pretty quick.
Look, might have been a different guy. This guy tried to sell me yet. I'm going, oh, come on, just go. All right. Anything else? Any other business to come before council tonight?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Butler?
I just wanted to say, Councilmember Carlson and I got to tour the Anoka County Jail earlier today. We thought it'd be good just to go because there's so much discussion about how, you know, they're getting a new jail in town, and depending on, you know, when the timing of that happens, it would impact property taxes at the county level. So Councilmember Carlson and I went, we had a great tour just learning about the current facility, the needs of why there's going to be a new facility. That new facility's probably going to be in Anoka, but I know there's all sorts of fun discussions about that, and I just wanted to thank Chief Steiner for helping set up the visit.
All right. Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Carlson, second by Geisler to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.